What do you do when the only thing left of someone you loved is a horse they left behind? He asked the question into the cold barn as if the beams could answer. Frost crinkled under his boots. The stable smelled of hay and old leather, the small, particular smell of places that remember hands. Wind moved over the roof like someone pacing. It was late autumn. The fields were gray. He had come early because mornings felt quieter, more forgiving of fragile things. He moved with the slow, careful steps of someone who has learned to avoid breaking what little remained. Outside the stall, the horse stood as a silhouette first, a line of neck, a shoulder, the hollow of a flank. He felt the animal before he saw its face, the soft cadence of breath, the inaudible shift of weight. Horses announce themselves in presence. He did not hurry. Quickness makes horses draw back. He kept his hands low and open, breathing steady. The horse turned its ears and watched, its gaze steady and assessing like someone listening for a story's seam. The animal was older. Its coat held work and weather. Faint scars, a white star high on the forehead, silver along the nose. It moved with the economy of an animal that conserves motion for what matters. When it stepped closer, it did so without spectacle, a practical curiosity testing risk. He let his palm rest against the stall door. The horse inhaled his sleeve, then the knuckles of his hand, then his cheek with a careful curiosity. Its nostrils were warm. When it exhaled against his face, something in him unclenched. She, the woman who had left, rose up like a thinned photograph. A braid over a shoulder, laughter soft and quick, hands that braided without looking. He kept those memories tucked like coins, afraid naming them would make them small. He had only a rumor that this horse had once belonged to her, a blurred photograph, a halter with a worn tag. He read the name aloud. Eben. The sound felt strange. The horse flicked an ear and lowered its head as if weighing the steadiness of his voice. Trust with a horse is granular. It arrives in small agreements, a steady hand on a flank, the same path walked at the same time, the repetition of care. They built such agreements by accident. He came, brushed its coat, scraped the manger, left. The horse learned the pattern, and began to anticipate him like weather. A ritual formed between them. Enter, pause, reach. Feel the warm rise of its throat. Back away. On rainy afternoons, he discovered the horse liked its right shoulder massaged until a low grinding came from its throat. He learned its tics, a toss of the head when uneasy, the hollowing of a flank when alarmed. One slick afternoon, the animal stumbled over a hidden root. He caught its hindquarter without thinking. The horse shivered and then folded against him like a wall. Its muscles were a map under his palm. Old work, honest fatigue. It was a wordless exchange. He steadied the animal and, in doing so, steadied himself. At night he stood outside the barn and listened to its breath. He counted not for precision, but to be steady with something that refused to speed past his grief. In the dark, the barn held memories without asking for explanation. He began to test the edge of the animal's memory. He brought a cap that smelled faintly of her, perfume and sun. When he showed it, the horse's ears pricked, and it turned to a corner of the stall with a slow, deliberate motion. It touched the cap with its nose as if confirming a detail, and then rested its forehead against his palm like both answer and question. He found himself inventing small consultations. Could a horse remember a person? Did animals keep pockets of memory humans lose? He suspected they remember as bodies do, touch, rhythm, smell, not as stories. There were mornings when the past arrived heavy. He would find a letter and the words would open like a wound. One day he found a folded bookmark with handwriting. He could trace with his thumb. He kept it like an unlit match, useful for light, dangerous if struck. On that day the horse stayed close. When he read the looping script aloud, the animal shifted and turned toward a section of fence, as if recognizing a geometry of motion. It did not react to names, but to the cadence of his voice, and the particular tremor when he spoke of her. In the stall, the horse lowered its head and stood watch while he let the grief come in waves. Slowly their days accumulated, small, recovering rituals that neither erased the past nor let it consume the present. He slept better, not because grief vanished, but because a living presence pressed warm and honest against the edge of mornings. The horse lost some guardedness. It learned to wait at the gate rather than fret. Its patience had less to do with training and more with a decision to stay. He wondered about memory's stubbornness. People are messy in how they hold on. Animals store facts as touch and smell. Maybe that was why he returned. He wanted a memory that would not argue back. A presence that would not demand explanations. A life not measured only by absence. 1. Morning. The horse met him not with curiosity, but with steady attention that made him feel seen. They stood and breathed together, and for the first time in a while nothing in him needed argument. He turned to go, and the animal followed a half-step behind, not from duty but choice. When he walked away, he felt the space beside him filled by the echo of a large, quiet body. The question that had opened his visit returned, heavier now. What do you do when the only thing left of someone you loved is a living animal that remembers in ways you do not? He closed the gate and left the barn. The silence after him felt different, less vacant, shaded by an expectation he could not name. He had not found answers, only company that refused to vanish. At the lane he paused and looked back. The horse's head lifted, its ears pricked toward him. Under the thin morning sky their eyes met, and a small, sharp longing settled in his chest. He did not know why the animal had chosen him, or what it would ask in return. He only knew he would come back tomorrow. He imagined nights ahead, the slow, patient business of learning to be needed again. He imagined naming small, safe things aloud. A grain bucket, a path, a light left on in the barn. Each name would be a promise, not to fill the absent person's place, but to make room beside memory for something living. That thought felt both terrifying and necessary, like stepping out onto thin ice with careful, resolute feet. And he was ready. The barn had become more than wood and hay. It had become a kind of confessional. He arrived each morning, not out of obligation, but because silence seemed different when shared with another breathing thing. The horse, Eben, waited now, always at the gate, ears turning when he heard boots crunch frost. The anticipation was steady, not frantic, as though the animal had learned something about time. That this man would come, and that waiting was safe. But with comfort came something else, something he could not explain. There were moments, quiet and unplanned, when Eben seemed to know, not about buckets of grain or the rhythm of brushing. Something deeper. The first time it happened, he had been humming. Not even consciously. Just a low tune his mother used to sing when cooking. The horse froze, ears straining forward, nostrils widening. It stepped closer, pressing against the wood like trying to find a sound's origin. He stopped humming, startled. The horse let out a long breath. Its head dipped, then lifted again, as though urging him. So he tried once more. Softer. The same tune, and something shifted. Eben exhaled in rhythm, a strange, almost aching sound, the kind of noise horses make when they recognize, not just react. That night he couldn't sleep. He turned over the moment in his mind like a coin in his palm. Could a horse remember a melody? Could it carry sound across years? He thought of soldiers whistling to calm their mounts in trenches, of voices that steadied trembling bodies under shell fire. It felt impossible, and yet he had seen it. The next morning, he brought a box from the attic. Inside, objects he had not touched in years, a folded uniform jacket, a medal, a letter sealed and never answered. He laid them on the stall's ledge, one by one, as though setting evidence before a witness. The horse's eyes followed each piece, but when he placed the jacket, the old wool that still held the faintest trace of gun oil and dust, the horse stepped forward sharply, ears pinning back, then forward again. It reached, touched the fabric with its lips, and shuddered. He swallowed hard, throat burning. Because in that moment he was certain, Eben had known a soldier once, perhaps even his soldier. The barn felt too small for the weight of it. He steadied himself against the doorframe, dizzy. All those nights listening to breath in the dark, all the questions that had gnawed at him, they pressed forward with new urgency. He wanted to deny it, to say he was imagining. That grief was painting meaning onto random gestures. But the horse stayed close, steady, warm. And he realized denial was thinner than he thought. Days stretched into weeks. He noticed more. The way Eben reacted to a certain whistle, one he hadn't even realized he'd picked up from his grandfather. The way the horse would stop dead in the pasture near the sound of distant fireworks, body taut, but never bolt, like an old soldier standing still, weathering memory. Each discovery drew him deeper into something he wasn't sure he wanted, because remembering meant reopening, and reopening meant bleeding. He fought it. For a while he tried to keep visits simple: brush, feed, leave. He told himself not to look for meaning in every twitch of an ear, but the horse wouldn't let him. Go back to shallow. One night he lingered longer than usual, sitting on a bale with his hands pressed to his face. He had found another letter that day, one he had never read until now. Her handwriting had grown thin at the end. Each word waited, like it knew time was closing. The horse shifted, restless, then moved to stand right in front of him, not nervously, purposeful. It lowered its great head until the soft muzzle pressed against his hair, stayed there, breathing, steady, patient. That was when the tears came, harder than he expected. His body shook, shoulders curling inward as though he could hide grief from an animal. But Eben stayed. Every time he pulled back, the horse returned, forehead brushing his arm, insistent in its quiet. It felt absurd, crying into the mane of a creature that could never answer. But it was also the first time in years he hadn't been entirely alone in grief. The breaking point came weeks later. He had been searching the tack room, clearing space, when he found it. A bridle wrapped in old cloth. The leather cracked, stiff, with age, but carved into the cheekpiece, faint but unmistakable, was a name: Captain. The air left his chest. It was the name she had once told him, in passing, of the horse her father had ridden in the war. The same name scratched into photographs, long tucked in boxes: Captain, not Eben, not just a draft horse. A soldier's mount. His hands trembled so badly the bridle fell to the floor. He turned, and the horse was there in the doorway, watching. "Captain," he whispered. His voice cracked on the syllables. The horse stepped forward, ears pricked. It stopped just shy of him then, deliberate, slow, lowered its head until its brow pressed into his chest. The weight of it nearly broke him in half. All the walls he had built against remembering crumbled. He sank to his knees in straw, arms wrapping the broad neck, body shaking with sobs he could not restrain. For the first time, he let the grief tear fully through him. The war, the loss, her absence, the decades of silence. And the horse did not move. It stood over him, steady as a stone, breath slow, anchoring him through the storm. When the sobs ebbed, he realized he was holding not just a horse, but a living remnant of history. Flesh and breath that had walked through fire with men long gone. A being that carried pieces of her, and of him, through time. From that night, something changed. He no longer came to the barn simply to escape loneliness. He came to remember, and to keep memory alive. Each brushstroke, each scoop of grain, each song hummed softly into the rafters, became an act of tribute. Weeks passed, then months. His steps grew lighter, his sleep steadier. There was no miraculous healing. Grief does not vanish. But there was companionship. The horse had absorbed part of the weight he thought only he could carry. And one autumn evening, the final gift came. He had been walking the pasture when Captain, he could no longer call him anything else, drifted toward the far fence line. The horse pawed at the earth until something metallic glinted in the soil. He knelt, brushed dirt aside, an old rusted tag, military issue, a number stamped, half-worn. It was proof. Proof that this animal had once stood under fire. Proof that he had not imagined. He held it in his palm until his hands ached. Then he looked up at the great horse who had led him here. Sometimes, the ones who carry you are the ones no one else sees coming. The line echoed in his chest as he pressed his forehead to the warm coat. This was not just her memory, not just his grief. It was survival itself, returned to him in flesh and breath. And he knew then he was ready to live again. Not by forgetting, but by walking forward beside the very creature who had already carried memory farther than any man could. If this story touched you, subscribe, leave a comment, and press the bell so you can be here for the next story that just might change your heart.